Hello book lovers, and welcome back or welcome to Nat Cat's Bookish Cafe. Today we are going to celebrate my 3-year anniversary here on Booktube with a little book tag. So the tag I will be doing today is called the Get to Know My Taste tag, and this was originally created by My Name is Marinas. I am hoping I am saying the name correctly. I will of course have her channel and the original video linked down below. I usually don't really do anything special for my anniversaries as far as I can remember. I mean, I've only had 2 other anniversaries so far. I started my channel in June of 2022, but I decided after seeing this video a couple months ago that it would be a good video to do for my anniversary, just so that you guys could get to know me a little bit better. So before we jump into the 15 questions that I will be answering, I've not looked at these questions for 2 months, so I have no idea what they are, and hopefully I will be able to come up with answers relatively quickly on the spot. But I just wanted to go ahead and give you, my followers or subscribers, a huge thank you. I would not be here without you guys. I mean, maybe I would be. Maybe I would just be talking into the void even if there was no one there. But of course, it is so much more fun to do this when I know there is someone on the other side watching and responding to my videos. I really appreciate all of the support that you guys have offered over the years. I really feel like over the last 3 years, my channel has really changed a little bit, and not so much with like how I'm doing content. I mean, I have reduced my videos from 2 videos a week to 1 video a week just because, you know, it was getting a little bit overwhelming. But I just feel like as a creator and as someone standing in front of a camera and recording, I am just so much more comfortable and confident, and I feel like I'm really able to give you guys a piece of my true self rather than just this nervous girl in front of the camera who's just trying not to make a fool of herself. So I hope that you guys have been enjoying my content, and hopefully you will continue to enjoy it for years to come. I don't really have any plans to leave Booktube. This is a hobby of mine that I really enjoy. This is a community I really enjoy. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy that you guys are here. Jumping into the questions, question number 1 is going to be, how do you rate your books? I would say that I am someone who rates a lot based off of vibes. I'm definitely someone who says, hey, you know, my star rating will give you a general idea of if I like the book, if I love the book, if I felt meh about the book, if I hated the book. But for the most part, you definitely want to go ahead and read or listen to my reviews when I give them, because I could give a book in one genre that I really liked a 4-star, and then I could give a book in another genre that I really liked a 5-star. I don't know how it works. This question has me as stumped as it has you stumped. I mean, I'm not like someone who uses Corepile or anything along those lines. I would say I am someone who gives a lot of 4 stars. For me, 4 stars is probably the most common rating. It means that I had a really good time with this book. There was a ton of things I enjoyed about this book. I recommend that you read it. Is it an all-time favorite book? Am I going to remember that I read it 2 years from now? I don't know. Maybe not. But I do try to be one of those people who gives out a decent amount of 5-star reads as well, because there's some people who are like, I read 100 books and I gave 5 stars this year, and I'm like, that's kind of sad. It's kind of sad that you only had 5 5-star reads, because I go into books with the intention of loving them. And so if I do love them, I will go ahead and give them 5 stars. So honestly, my rating system is a little wishy-washy. I don't give a lot of books under a 3-star because I do DNF books. And so if I get the vibe that it's gonna be under 3 stars, chances are I will probably DNF the book, especially if it's a book that's over like 350 or so pages, because I'm not about to waste my time on anything like that. So again, vibes is how I rate books. I have a general idea in my head. Do I know how to vocalize that? No, just listen to my reviews and you'll have a better idea of how I truly felt about the story. The second question is, how do you approach your reviews? Is it more structural, analytical? Is it going to be more emotional? I would say that emotion plays a bigger role than more, I guess I would consider structural. I would say how the book makes me feel. Did I love the characters? Did I love the themes of the book? Did I relate to them? Did I feel strongly about them? Did I feel like I learned something or that I related to something? Those are more important to me than, oh, I really love the writing, or I really love the world building, or I really love the plot. All of those things are important to me, but if I had to rank them, the emotional aspect of the story is definitely more important. And so I would say that when I'm reviewing a book, I definitely talk about both, but I would say my emotional feelings towards the book are going to impact my rating a little bit more, and so may take up a little bit more of my reviews. Also, I'm not someone who has like a degree in literature or anything like that. I mean, I took my AP English courses and I took some writing courses when I was getting my associate's degree, but nothing on a higher level. And so I don't feel like I'm even qualified to really rate books and review them on a technical level or anything. I really am just your everyday reader who is reading for a good time and is essentially using her experience of having read other books. So oftentimes my ratings and what I expect from a good author is what I've experienced from other good authors. So emotional, a little bit structural, but like I said earlier, I rate books based off of vibes, so it should not be a surprise that when it comes to my reviews, it is more emotion based. Question number 3 is a hard one because it says, what is the book that made you a reader? I mean, I spent a good chunk of my childhood reading. We always had books, a combination of German and English, picture books, chapter books. I know me and my sister were big fans of like Junie B. Jones and the Magic Tree House. Those were a couple books that we really read a lot. Even the Warriors series, which I just recently reread, I think a year or 2 ago, and honestly, it holds up. So those are a couple books more from my younger years that I read. I would say there was another book that I really enjoyed, but I never finished the series. I just had to look it up, and it was the Pendragon series by D.J. McCall. I never finished that series, but it was like this sci-fi story about this kid who would travel to like different worlds, and he would have like some mission on every world. So stories like that were good for my childhood. And then I would say when I got to high school and for a few years after that, I didn't do as much reading because I was focusing on school. Then I was doing school full-time and working. So I didn't have as much time to read. And then eventually I started to get into it a little bit more. And I would say the books that kind of got me back into it, let me grab a couple. All right, so I have 4 books here. One is going to be Splintered by A.G. Howard. I still remember watching one of my coworkers read this book and being like, I want to read that. And I think it was one of the first books I checked out from the library again, and I have like since purchased a used library copy of it, and this is like an Alice in Wonderland retelling. We also have the Matched series, and I believe that I had never read the third book in this series, and so, or maybe I had only ever read the first book, and so I had reread this book and then read the rest of the series, and it was your classic dystopian love triangle kind of situation, and it was a grand old time. Then of course Cassandra Clare did play a role. I didn't like any of her other books, but the Clockwork Angel trilogy, yes, absolutely loved the ending of this book. I still remember finishing it, and I was trying to tell my mom about it in the parking lot of the Dancing Goats coffee shop, and I just started sobbing again. Like, the ending of this book was just so sad to me. Once again, a love triangle situation. I really think that I do love polyamory so much because love triangles were fun to read, but it was never fun that they only chose one of them. And then I do believe that the Lunar Chronicles series definitely played a role as well, because I am a girl who grew up on Disney and Disney princesses, and I did really like sci-fi books when I was younger, hence the Pendragon series. And so I did really have a good time with this, and that got me a little bit more into those longer series as well. I actually also want to include Stolen by Lucy Christopher. This was another book that made me cry a lot. I just remember crying on the airplane back from, like, I think it was Arizona. I was like, this is so embarrassing, but this was kind of like, I would say this was leaning towards a darker romance, but like a YA, where essentially this girl gets kidnapped by this guy and she spends this time with him out in the desert, and I think she didn't have like a lot of freedom, and so this was kind of like the first time she got to experience that. And it was clear that he really cared for her, but also like he had kidnapped her, so he wasn't like the best guy, but at the same time he never like really hurt her or anything like that. And so this definitely was one of those romances that had a big impact on me when I first got back into reading. All right, I think that's a pretty good list of books that I was kind of really enjoying and still remember enjoying when I just was getting back into reading in like my early 20s. Just as a reference, I am 29 and turning 30 later this year, so those were read quite a few years ago. Question number 4 is, do you have a genre niche? Now, I would say no. I read relatively broadly. I wouldn't say that I read just romance or just fantasy or just contemporary or just historical. I read a little bit of everything. There are definitely certain genres that I read a little bit more. I often say that I read like more fantasy. I think I also read a bit more contemporary. I try to avoid historical. It's not really my cup of tea. Sci-fi is something I'm definitely interested in, but I don't pick up quite as much as I would like to. I keep trying to get myself to read it more and more, but somehow I just don't quite manage to do it. In the last few years since I've gotten on Booktube, I've started to be drawn more to like horrors and thrillers, not mysteries as much. Horrors and thrillers are more my vibe, but I definitely wouldn't say that if you came to my channel that I would be able to say like, these are the genres that I will read. Like if you're looking for romance recommendations, period, you're not gonna get just that. I do really love romance. A lot of the books that I read have at least a romance subplot in them, but not all of them. But still, I wouldn't say that I'm niche or anything like that. I'm a little bit too all over the place for that. I am someone who gets a little bit bored if I read too much of the same thing. So oftentimes I'll be like, why am I getting bored of this genre? Oh, because I've read 3 books in a row of this genre. So just to keep me interested, I really do need to keep it mixed up a little bit. Question number 5 is something I already touched on just like a smidge earlier, and that is, do you prefer a character-driven story or a plot-driven story? And I would definitely say that I am more character-driven. I mean, I don't love super boring books. Like lit fic isn't something that I like to read a lot, and those are often seen as being more character-driven, but I do know that I could more easily read a book where the plot's like but the characters are amazing, while I couldn't read a book where I'm like, these characters are bland or I don't like them, even if the plot is really good. So I would definitely say that I am a more character-driven reader. Question number 6 is, what is a book you love so much you don't care if other people don't like it? And I actually have 2 answers for this, and these are pretty divisive books. These are the kind of books where you either love it or you hate it, and honestly, if someone doesn't like it, you kind of understand. It's more a problem when people feel indifferent about it. You're like, how do you feel indifferent about this? Either you gotta love it or you can hate it. You can't give it 3 stars. The first one is gonna be the All for the Game series, the first book being The Foxhole Court. This was like laying like this, so they're, yes, I do need to dust my shelves, I know. And this is by Nora Sakovic. So this is like, you go into the fandom and the fandom acknowledges this book is, I don't know, some like raccoon on crack cocaine wrote it or something like that. This book follows Neil Justin, and essentially he is a XC player, which is a made-up sport, but it's very much like lacrosse. And he is the son of a serial killer who works for the mafia, and he and his mother have been on the run for a few years. And at the beginning of the series, we follow him as he is alone for the first time because his mother has passed away after an encounter with some of his father's men. And he is kind of undercover, or like trying to stay hidden, at this small high school, and he decides to join the XC team because he just loves the sport so much he can't stay away. However, he doesn't know that his coach secretly sends in a video of him playing to some universities, and one of those universities, Palmetto State Foxes, comes and tells him not that he can, not that they want him to, but that he is going to join their team. They're not going to take no for an answer. And he is essentially like, this is a really bad idea because the Foxes are the primary competitors of the Ravens, and the Ravens happen to be owned by the mafia that his father works for. But he doesn't have a choice, and honestly, he wants to go and play for Palmetto State. So he is heading off to university, expecting to be dead by the end of the year, and that entire year he spends playing XC, avoiding his serial killer father and avoiding the mafia, falling in love with a guy who is toxic beyond reason, and trying to fix the players on this team because they are like the team of misfits. Everyone on that team has had some sort of effed up past, and so he is just like trying to bring the whole team together to the championships, and he figures he has nothing to lose because he's gonna be dead anyway, and so he is just, he's doing things most sane people would not do, and I love every minute of this book. And if you don't love it, I don't care. Your opinion is valid, but I will not stop loving this book no matter what. Another book I love so much that if you don't like it, I don't even care, is gonna be The Captive Prince by C.S. Beckett. This is one of the first queer books that I read. I always contribute my queer reading awakening to The Song of Achilles, this book, as well as, where is it? Where Into the River I Drown by TJ Klune. Those are the first 3 queer books that I really remember reading it. I remember checking out the first book in this series from my library, so shout out to my library. Okay, she also introduced me to Into This River I Drown, so my library is a real one, and I read this book in less than a day, which is, to this day, I don't really read books in one sitting, but I read this book in one day. Then I picked up book 2, The Princess Gambit, read it in one day, and then picked up King's Rising, book 3, read it in one day as well. So every book in the series was a one-dayer for me. This, I know, has some controversy around it because some people claim it is a slave master romance. I don't consider it that because the relationship between these two does not start until Damon, who is in a position of slavery at the beginning, is no longer seen as a slave. So that's why I don't feel that way, but you could definitely make that argument. So that could be a warning against those who are completely opposed to those kinds of stories. In this book, we are following Damon, also known as Damianos, and he has been kidnapped from his kingdom by people working for his half-brother. Essentially, their father has died, and his half-brother has made a play for the throne by making Damianos disappear. And he ends up not just killing him or sending him off to the mines or whatever, he ends up sending him to Prince Laurent as his pleasure slave, which is very problematic for Damianos because Damianos actually kind of killed Laurent's older brother during war a few years ago. However, luckily for him, Laurent doesn't seem to recognize him, and so he starts to plan his escape. However, eventually he starts to realize that the politics in Vier are just as complicated as in his home kingdom of Aklios, and it would be in his best interest to make sure that Laurent gets the throne instead of his power-hungry uncle. And so the two of them start to work together, and the story is scrumptious. Oh my gosh, this is like a slow burn romance, okay? Anytime I read a slow burn romance and they get together or like even like each other in the first book, I'm like, I don't think so. I don't think so, because this is a slow burn romance. Thank you very much. I absolutely adore the second book the most, but I just think that C.S. Paquette, that they do a really great job of like creating a world, creating politics, creating complicated, messy relationships, and creating these great character arcs. This, in my opinion, is the definition of a fantasy romance because the romance is very much in the backdrop, but it is definitely there and you know it. You are locked in. So this is another book that if you don't like it, okay, that's fine, but I will be buried with this book. Me and this book will be in my casket, living happily ever after in all eternity. Question number 7 is similar, but a little bit different because it's, what is a book you love so much that if someone doesn't like it, you just know that your guys' tastes don't align? And I'm gonna have to just dig around in my little pea brain for a moment to see. All right, once again, I have 2 books here. I have one young adult and one adult. Starting with the young adult, I'm gonna go with Hell Followed With Us, and this is by Andrew Joseph White. This is an author I have read another book from. In fact, I think I gave this one 4.5 stars, and I gave The Spirit Bares Its Teeth 5 stars. But I decided to choose this book because this book has kind of that found family vibe to it. It has this great aspect of religious horror, which I really enjoy. It has a ton of queerness. It has post-apocalyptic vibes, which I also really enjoy. It also has that overlap of body horror meets the trans experience, which is something that Andrew Joseph White does incredibly, in my opinion. So this book has a lot of tropes that I really quite enjoy. I enjoyed all the different forms of representation in here, different forms of queerness, different races and ethnicities. There was also a side character who has autism. So this book, I would say, if you don't like it, there's a part of me that understands a little bit, because you know, horror and especially body horror can be very difficult for people, but everything else, you know, the religious themes, the found family, the queerness, the representation overall, I think that if you aren't into those things, you and me might not be compatible. The adult book I want to talk about is The Last Son by Katie Edwards. Once again, found family is a huge part of the story. I think that as someone who enjoys queer books, most queer people love found family. So if you don't like found family, it is a little bit of a red flag for me. Like, how do you not like that trope? This book has a ton of queerness in it, as well as some disability representation. I really enjoyed the world building. For me, I don't like info dumping, and so this, I think, gradually introducing and expanding the world over the trilogy really worked for me. So if you like someone who's like bombarded with information at the beginning, for me, I'm like, what is going on? We might be into slightly different books. I also really love strong friendships in my stories. They don't always have to be romantic relationships that I'm rooting for. I also like that this has a little bit of a dark side to it. I think books that have just like a smidge of griminess to them really work for me, because I think it just like really ups the stakes, where you're not like, oh, everybody's safe, everything's gonna be fine. You're like, oh, things can get really sketchy real quick. So I had a great time with the story. Really enjoyed the writing, really enjoyed the plot and the characters. And I would say that if you do not like this book at all, I may not take book recommendations from you. All right, guys, we are going very slow here, so this is going to be a long video. I would say I'm going to speed up, but I don't know if I will. Question number 8 is going to be, what is in your trash pocket? Which apparently means, like, what is a book? What is a trope that you know is bad? You know, or it's not like bad, but honestly most people would kind of judge you for liking it. Let me think. There's a few tropes. I already mentioned that I like polyamory with an emphasis on reverse harem. Not everyone enjoys that. I enjoy multiple lovers. I definitely enjoy a good monster romance. I find those very exciting, especially when it comes to non-human sex organs. Those are really interesting for me to read. I do occasionally like more taboo romances. Psychopath romances work really well for me. I have loved a couple books where there are people together that are related. I mean, The Death of Yvick of Oji by Akwaeke Emezi. They are cousins. Really loved the relationship there, as well as Apples of New Eden. They were half brothers, and that also worked really well for me. So those kind of taboo incest vibes do work for me if they are handled well and are obviously fiction. I would also say that when it comes to like BDSM themes, I enjoy those in my books, and I do quite like the consensual non-consent, which is one of the more extreme BDSM vibes that some people might avoid, but those are ones that I enjoy that other people might try to avoid. Question number 9 is, do you have a deal breaker? Like, if this appears in your books, then you're just straight up out of there. I'm trying to think, because there are definitely tropes that I don't like. Like, does anyone like miscommunication? I have to admit, I am not a big fan of like office romances. I've really been avoiding them ever since I read The Hating Game, and then there was that other book that I forgot the name of. It was like inspired by The Hating Game. I don't want to go look for it, but then editing Natalie's gonna feel like she's gonna have to look for it. Let me find it. The Spanish Love Deception. There we go. I found it. The Spanish Love Deception. Those are 2 office romances that have really turned me off from office-based stories, so chances are I would like not even pick them up. There are certain things, obviously, like if there was on-page sexual assault that I felt like was really unnecessary or over the top, where I might be like, okay, I don't think I'm gonna stick around and read this. If I felt like there was anything problematic, like racism or fat phobia, ableism, homophobia, and it wasn't like part of the story where it was kind of clear that the author shared those feelings, that would probably get me out of there. But other than that, I can't off of the top of my head think of anything where I was just like, no, I have to dip because I saw that. I don't think that I've ever come across something solid like that that made me DNF. Usually it's something more gradual that leads me to DNF. At this point, I just have a better idea of what I do and don't like when it comes to tropes and themes and settings and whatnot, so I don't often pick up books that potentially even have things in them that are too problematic for me to want to continue with it. So I don't really have a solid answer for this one, to be honest. Question number 10 is, what is a strong opinion you have about books that have been released in the last year? I mean, I suck at reading new releases, so I don't think I've read too many new releases and then develop really strong feelings about them. I do have some general feelings about like what is being published and what is being pushed, or getting a little bit more hype or more promotional resources than other books, but it's honestly just stuff that I've been thinking for years, and that's, it lacks diversity. Okay, more queer books need to come out and be hyped. Things like, hey, haven't I heard that synopsis before? A lot of these books are coming out and they sound like books that have already been out. Or even feeling disappointed when you find out like, hey, this person used AI for the cover, or even this publisher used AI for this cover, or it's possible that this book was written by AI, or anything involving AI. Those are always really disappointing to hear about. Hearing certain like quotes from books that have come out, you know, sometimes like videos will be like showing a quote or showing the behavior of like the male interests and just feeling like it's leaning more towards problematic than sexy, in my opinion, especially when it comes like to the romantasy genres. A lot of the guys are just giving too much alpha male, in my opinion. A lot of people point out that romantasy, a lot of them, especially the more popular ones, heterosexual white women are writing, are leaning more towards conservative values and taking these strong women and putting them with a bully of a man and letting her get bullied into being less. So those are all things that I have problems with books that are being published currently, because that is what people are reading, and obviously the publishing industry is going to put more and more out that falls within those categories. But that is stuff that I felt for more than a year. I'm trying to think if there's anything that's been released this year where I'm like, I will say that I've recently been watching and seeing things talking about the increase in Dramini books that are being written by fan fiction writers. And while I personally obviously don't have a problem with fan fiction or those writers going from fan fiction into publishing work, obviously I have no problem with that. My problem personally is the Hermione aspect of it, because I am someone who is strongly opposed to people talking about Harry Potter, because J.K. Rowling, the author of Harry Potter, is a huge transphobe and also gives a lot of money to transphobic organizations. And just seeing this ship, this Hermione ship, just kind of like blowing up has been very disappointing. Because, like, why now? That's my question. Why now? I mean, these books are so old, this ship is so old, and we're out here being like, hey, what if we moved around from Harry Potter? And instead of like doing that, we're almost like having this resurgence. And you may argue like, oh, well, they're not reading Harry Potter, but there are people who read these fan fictions or read these stories and are like, oh my gosh, I have to read the original text. And guess what the original text is? Harry Potter. So yes, that is something that I have had a little bit of beef with. For multiple reasons. One, because even back before I left Harry Potter behind, I obviously shipped the only people that deserve to be shipped together, and that's Draco and Harry. Any other option is wrong. Hermione and Draco, what is that? Absolutely not. And two, we don't ship anybody there anymore because we don't need to be consuming all this Harry Potter content anymore. We can just move on. Please and thank you. All right, now that I went through a little rant, apologies. Question 11 is, what do you look for in writing? Like I mentioned earlier, I am not like a writing expert or anything. When it comes to talking about what I like in writing, I'm like, I want it to be good. There is certain dialects that I don't enjoy reading. I remember that earlier this year I DNF'd The Fingersmith by Sarah Waters because it had that old-timey, what was it, early 1800s London dialect, and I've never liked that. And there are probably a few dialects here and there. When I hear people speaking it in books, I'm just kind of like, no offense, but this is kind of annoying. Other than that, when it comes to writing, I do like slightly more lyrical writing. Sometimes authors can overdo it where you're like, hey, this is just like a normal book, not a poetry book, and you just kind of feel like they're overdoing it. Some authors, when they overdo it, give me vibes of like what I was writing in poetry in middle school. And obviously, if I feel like an author is writing the way that I was writing in middle school, I feel like their writing isn't that good, because my writing was not that good in middle school. So sometimes there is such a thing as overdoing it, but other times really beautiful, haunting writing. We're talking about like Don't Let the Forest In had really stunning writing. The Summer Sons also has a really stunning writing in it. For me, Cole McCade has a really great writing style that works really well with like slightly darker, slightly kinkier romances. So I would say writing styles that have a slightly darker side to them definitely work for me. I would also say books that have lines that you just gotta like reread them, where you're like, whoa, that was amazing. Like they really just came up with that and wrote it down. I will say that I also need writing to be relatively clear, you know, like I said, we aren't reading poetry. I don't want to have to like interpret what you are trying to say. Obviously, I expect slightly different writing when reading different genres. Things like contemporary can be a little bit more straightforward, a little bit more casual. Sci-fi and fantasy could be a little bit more lyrical, but also need to be clear because there is a lot of aspects of the story that I'm going in not knowing anything about. Stories like horror can be a little darker, a little grimier, but I also enjoy a more lyrical aspect to my horror stories. I'm a big fan of like nature horror, and so I enjoy when those are kind of intertwined. You're probably like, what kind of writing do you like? I don't know, guys. I don't know. I would just say that I need to be able to understand what the author is saying. And while they can definitely add embellishments, the author needs to find a balance between having beautiful writing and foo-foo writing. So that's the best that I can do with that description. Hopefully that kind of made sense. Question number 12. How do you decide what you read next? It kind of depends. So I have a TBR game that I usually play every other month. Here in the middle of the year, I am having to take a little bit of a break from it due to some traveling that I am doing, but usually every other month I try to choose what I'm reading using this TBR game. But I also sometimes try to choose books either using other games, other formats, just mood reading, kind of basing it maybe sometimes off of video ideas. I don't choose books based off of video ideas too often because I don't often have many vlogs that I am doing. There are some creators that do like 3-4 vlogs a month, and I am someone who maybe does 1 vlog a month, so that is just not something that often impacts the books that I am reading. I would say more often it is kind of a mood thing. I am someone who consider myself a TBR mood reader, meaning that I need a smaller TBR for the month, and then I just kind of based off of my mood read what I want off of that smaller TBR, because I can't have an overwhelming amount of choices, but I also can't be like, okay, this is the first book I'll read this month, this is the second, this is the third, and just have like my entire month planned out and have the books that I'm going to read for the entire month in order or anything like that. That is a little bit too extreme for me. I would also say I'm not a huge seasonal reader. I would say that fall is kind of the only season where I kind of feel more in the mood for like those spooky thriller kind of vibes, darker stories. For the rest of the year, I kind of just read whatever. I do create seasonal TBRs, but I'm not very good to sticking with them. I feel like in the last few months, I've really been moving a little bit more towards mood reading, and so I'm trying to adjust how I create my TBRs for this feeling that I have been having. Overall, I do have annual goals as well that I try to keep in mind when creating TBRs, but other than that, I would say nowadays it is kind of a vibes thing. Like, what am I in the mood for? I'm looking at my physical books. I try and read from there a good amount, but I also try to support my library. And then when it comes to like Libby holds, it really just kind of depends on like what's available. Nowadays I don't mention the books that I'm planning on reading via audiobook too often because it's so wishy-washy. So I don't really have like a way to pick TBRs. I think I'm kind of struggling to answer the question because I'm very much in a transitional period for how I'm picking my books. So hopefully in the next couple of months, I figure it out a little bit more for what really works for me. Question 13 is, where do you get your inspiration for your content? So usually my inspiration comes from other creators. I kind of see something that they're doing and I'll be like, oh, I want to do something along those lines. Or sometimes the books that I'm reading inspire my content, where I'll be like, oh, I read and enjoyed a lot of books within this genre or with this trope, and so I want to do a video based off of that. Or I just realized I have 4 books that are very similar on my TBR. Maybe I can create a vlog around that. Other times, maybe seasons create my content, you know, like creating seasonal TBRs or recommendations based off of Black History Month, Pride Month, things like that. So those are a few things that kind of impact the content that I create. Sometimes also time can impact it a little bit. Like for the month of July, I will be gone from the 11th to the 27th. So I'm hoping to pre-film quite a few things, but at the same time, I'm keeping in mind that if I need to pre-film and edit a bunch of videos, then the content just needs to be a little bit shorter and easier to edit. So these are all things I consider when creating my content. Question number 14 is gonna be, if you could make any book go viral right now, what would it be? And I just recently did a video called Underhyped Queer Books. So honestly, you can look at any of those books, but the book y'all are gonna kill me. You're gonna be like, Natalie, not this book again. What am I reaching for? Pretty. Oh my gosh. I have been hyping this book up since I read it. I think at the end of April. I gave it 5 stars. I instantly read book 2, which considering the way I've been doing with series lately is kind of amazing. Also gave it 5 stars, and I am constantly trying to get more people to read this book. It is by Keith F. Miller Jr. It is a contemporary romance. It is queer. We are following 2 young Black boys who are in their senior year of high school, and they have started a relationship with each other, and they are really struggling to stay together because of things that are happening around them. Their community is struggling right now because one of their main protectors, an organization known as the Black Diamonds, is being targeted by an unknown group, and they are trying to figure out how to protect themselves. And one of our characters, Leroy, his family is the leader of this organization, and so he's really busy protecting his family, his community, protecting his partner Jay, and making sure he doesn't get caught in the crossfire or anything along those lines. This book I want to be hyped up because I feel like this is essential reading for young men. I think that the discussions, the way that it handles things like toxic masculinity, homophobia, racism, colorism, the way that it handles male emotions and platonic, familial, romantic relationships throughout this story is beautiful and so healthy in such a way that I think it would be such a powerful story to counteract a lot of the things that young men are seeing nowadays, like especially on the internet. Just the love that the men in this story have for each other and their openness to express it, and just having men realizing this is the way it's supposed to be, okay? No one is going to look down on you if you cry, if you express happiness, joy, and love towards those around you. Expressing emotion is just a normal thing. Not expressing emotion is the weird thing to do, so stop doing it. And I just feel like this book would be so powerful in the hands of the next generation of men that are growing up. Also, it normalizes queerness within the Black community. I also like the fact that it has a strong emphasis on communication, diplomacy, just community uplifting instead of violence when it comes to fighting certain battles. Just because you have to fight certain battles doesn't mean it has to get physical. So I really enjoyed the type of activism that was displayed in this story as well. So overall, this is a book that I think everyone should read. I know I mentioned primarily young men, but older men who need to unlearn some things, women who are looking to teach men, who are interacting with men, who should know what to expect from men and then expect nothing less, should read this book. Yes, so I would want this book to blow up because I think it has it definitely has less than 1,000 ratings. It might even have less than 500 ratings on Goodreads. All right, so for this last question, I'm gonna bring out my computer because I got a bad memory. The question is essentially, who are some booktubers that have similar tastes to you? So essentially, if you kind of like the books that I'm reading, then you might like these booktubers as well. So let's take a little look-see-loo at who I'm following. As far as like the amount of people I follow, I don't think I follow too many people. I'm relatively new to Booktube, not just that I've only been here for 3 years, but because I only started watching it towards the end of 2020. I am a COVID booktuber. I don't know what to call it. Essentially, COVID brought me here. So that is why I'm here. I did not know that Booktube existed before COVID. But let's take a look here. Willow Talks Books is a creator that I absolutely love. They are a trans creator, and they for a while were reading a lot of translated fiction and horror, and so I started following them because I was trying to get more into horror. And nowadays they have shifted a little bit more to kind of fantasy sci-fi stories. I think they got a little bit burnt out from the horror aspect considering what's going on in the world. They're like, I need a little bit more escapism, but they read a ton of queer books, and they make a lot of great content. Video essays, I guess you would consider them. So they are a really great and informative creator who reads a lot of queer stories. So if you like the fact that I read a lot of queer books, they are definitely one of them. Beautifully Bookish Bethany is another creator. I know that she's going to be posting a little bit less because she just got herself an internship and she's trying to find like full-time work just because like cost of living has been increasing, and so she's looking to add a second source of income to her household. But she focuses so much on diversity in her reading, and she reads a lot of books that are just not talked about as much, but she also reads a ton of new releases. Like I swear, like half of the books she reads are like for review. So she's like reading them ahead of schedule. So if you want to see like diverse books that are coming out new, she is definitely one to go ahead and check out. A model who reads is also someone who reads a lot of queer books. She has a really great personality. Watching her videos is just so much fun. A-Star Reads is another creator who I've been following since before I started my channel. I think she's actually one of the reasons that I kind of decided to go for this, because I really love interacting with her in the comments, and I was like, I want more of this. So she also has a TBR game that she plays from time to time, and she is also someone who reads relatively diversely, especially when it comes to like genres. She's not someone who has like a niche genre. So if you kind of like the fact that I read a little bit from everywhere, some older books, some newer releases, things like that, you will like that as well. I would say Mina Reads is another good option. She doesn't post too often, I think, but she also reads rather diversely, and she likes the Last Sun trilogy that I was talking about earlier, so that is a good sign. And then I would say I watch Riley Marie a lot. She reads a bit more queer books, and she herself is queer. and I would say her books are mostly like romance, horror, maybe? Don't quote me on that. So she's a good one. Gabby reads, I think her niche is mostly thrillers and horror as well as romance, so maybe not her, but I do love her. I feel like she has such a great energy that every time I watch her videos, I always end up adding books to my TBR because she's just like talks about them in such a way where you're like, well, now I have to read that, which is very annoying. Yeah, so obviously there are a ton of other great creators, but those are some where I think that if you like my channel, you might like them as well. So let me know if you guys have any other creators that you think that people who like my channel would like as well, so that those creators get a shout out down below. And obviously I will tag all the creators that I mentioned so you can check them out and follow them if you don't already. Alright guys, this video is currently sitting at over an hour, but I'm not sure if that's how long it'll be because I know I was meandering around my room coming up with answers every now and then, but I actually had quite a fun time with this tag. So if you want to answer any of the questions down in the comments, I would love to hear them. If any fellow creators come across this video and you want to do this tag, definitely do so. I would love if you tagged me so that I could see your answers as well. Thank you again guys for being here and following my channel and just supporting me and watching me become more and more obsessed with books as every year passes by. But as always guys, thank you so much for supporting my video by watching my videos, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.